Hey, it's Mike from the Run Testers, and this is our running review of the Samsung Galaxy Watch 4. So before getting into what the Galaxy Watch 4 is capable of, it's worth talking a little bit about where this smartwatch kind of stands. So it is the successor to the Galaxy Watch 3 and the Galaxy Watch Active 2. Now with those previous watches, those worked with iOS and Android. The Galaxy Watch 4 doesn't, so it only works with Android, so it's worth keeping in mind when watching this video. Now it runs on Google's Wear OS as opposed to Samsung's Tizen OS. We'll get into a bit more detail about what that means in terms of the experience on the watch, but ultimately what that means is you get access to Google's apps. We'll see kind of the software evolve over time. It's running Wear OS 3.0. It's the first watch to run that. There are other watches that will be, but this is the first one. So that's something to keep in mind. I think the main thing is that this is Wear OS as opposed to Tizen OS. It only works with Android, so not iOS like the previous watches. But it's going to give you a lot of that kind of Samsung smartwatch experience with the kind of Google kind of extras and elements kind of thrown in as well. So in terms of design on the Samsung Galaxy Watch 4, this should really be seen as the successor to the Samsung Galaxy Watch Active 2. Now there is a Galaxy Watch 4 and a Galaxy Watch 4 Classic. Now with the Watch 4 Classic, that's really kind of aping a kind of classic, kind of traditional watch design. Now with the Galaxy Watch 4, it's definitely something that's a little bit kind of more minimalist, a bit more simple, but actually I think quite nice and feels a little bit better suited for exercise and running. So you're getting the option of 40mm or 44mm cases. They're aluminium cases. This is the 44mm version. So those case sizes sit around what you got from the Galaxy Watch 3 and the Galaxy Watch Active 2. So around about the same size. I think it's a good size watch. I definitely think that 44mm I think seems about the sweet spot in terms of the case size. In terms of how you're interacting with this watch, you are getting kind of two physical buttons, so the home key and the back key. You are getting a touchscreen display. It's an AMOLED display. It's a nice size AMOLED display as well. In terms of the strap, you are getting a 20mm strap now. That's the same size strap that's used on the Watch 4 and the Watch 4 Classic. Now, what I will mention on the strap is that you have this kind of simple pin kind of mechanism to kind of remove the straps. What I found is the design of the straps that come with the Samsung, they sit very closely to the watch case and actually kind of curve around where it meets the watch case. So I found that I actually needed to, or wanted to kind of change the strap because I found it a little bit big for me, and I wanted to make sure it got a good kind of tight fit for kind of the sensors and from that point of view. But actually I found it very difficult to kind of just essentially just switch something in very quickly. So that's something to be mindful of. I'll kind of zoom in to kind of show you what I mean. But definitely while these straps are removable, just be wary of the fact that you might not be able to just kind of throw any old 20mm strap on here. So that's something that I definitely noticed. In terms of that screen and kind of interacting and using it, so there is an always on display option, but you also have the raise to wake kind of support as well, which I found fine during running. It wasn't too slow to kind of react to me kind of raising my wrist. When you're running, you use a combination of the kind of touchscreen to go through your screens, and you can kind of use the physical buttons to stop your sessions as well. And from that point of view, generally it was fine. Visibility was good for me in bright sunlight, which sometimes AMOLED displays can kind of struggle with. So I didn't have any major issues or notice any major issues for me on that front. In terms of what else you've got going on here, so all the sensor stuff is back here. So Samsung have kind of introduced a new kind of bioactive sensor, which essentially comprises their ECG, their optical PPG sensor, and now a BIA sensor, so you can kind of do the kind of measurements that you would do when you kind of step onto kind of a set of smart scales. You've got that there as well. But ultimately, for a watch to run with, I found really comfortable. I like the fact that it's kind of a very kind of simple kind of minimalist style looking watch. I was a fan of the way the Active 2 looked, and I think a lot of what was good about that is here as well. Now if you care about that kind of rotating or Samsung signature kind of rotating bezel that they've had in the watches, it is here. On the Galaxy Watch 4 it's a digital version, so I will kind of go into the fact that obviously Samsung have changed from Tizen to Wear OS, and Tizen kind of better kind of optimized for that digital kind of rotating bezel, so that's there if you want it. I don't think I found it that massively useful, but generally overall I think a nice comfortable watch to run with, to wear day to day, to take to bed and track your sleep as well. But yeah, I had a few issues with that strap, so that's just something to be mindful of when looking at this watch. So before getting into the testing, let's go over the key running features you can expect from the Samsung Galaxy Watch 4. So you're getting a smartwatch that offers satellite support for AGPS, GLONASS, Beidou and Galileo. There's an optical heart rate monitor, though there's no support to pair external HR sensors. In terms of running modes, there's outdoor running, treadmill running and a running coach that will guide you through elements like warm-ups and let you know when you're on or off the pace. There isn't native support for doing interval training. In general running mode, you can set targets, adjust data screens, set up auto laps and turn on or off auto pause. You can turn on an audio guide to also give you updates on your performance. When you get running, you can see up to 4 data fields and swipe the screen to see additional screens. You can also swipe the screen to pause, finish or adjust settings during your run, or hit the back button to get to the same screen alternatively. You can also access music controls if you're playing music from the watch or from your paired smartphone. So I do have to dedicate a little bit of time about the fact that the Samsung Galaxy Watch 4 runs on Google's Wear OS. So obviously previously Samsung used its Tizen OS. It used Wear OS way back early, kind of in the early days on one of their watches. Now it's essentially decided to move to Google's Wear OS, which obviously is bringing the influence from Fitbit, which Google acquired, but that's not really kind of shown on this watch just yet. So essentially what you're getting Wear OS, but you're also getting Samsung's own kind of UI on top. So it actually still feels very much like a Samsung smartwatch. Now where the difference is really felt, I think, apart from kind of maybe getting some nicer looking animations and things like that, Samsung's OS and Wear OS were very similar in elements, but where Samsung's really lacked was maybe the app ecosystem, and bringing those third-party apps. It's been something that has been an issue for Samsung's smartwatches or Tizen smartwatch from the start. So with Wear OS, you're obviously getting access to the Google Play Store, so that's going to bring in a few more apps. So at the moment, things that have kind of been optimized for Wear OS 3.0, which is the latest version of Wear, and Samsung's the first watch to run this. Things like Strava are available, things like Komoot, which obviously are on other platforms and watches as well, is there. But ultimately, you're seeing a few changes in terms of the software and where things live. But ultimately, I think it still feels very much like a Samsung smartwatch. Particularly for the running and the workout focus features. The UI feels slightly different, but ultimately what you're getting in terms of experience of running with this watch from a software perspective feels very similar. I still think it takes a bit of work to find the things that you need to find, particularly kind of for run tracking. You're still using Samsung Health to kind of view all of your data. You're not using the Wear OS app to set this up. You're using Samsung's Galaxy Wearable app to kind of set this watch up. So there's still a few apps in play, and hopefully going forward, that will kind of build this all into one app so to make it a lot easier to kind of set up and kind of view your data. But in terms of my experience of using Wear OS, particularly kind of a running performance, it still feels very similar to what we got on the Samsung Galaxy Watch 3 and the Active 2 in terms of what you get from run tracking. The main things for me in terms of the Wear OS influence is the kind of app support and the fact there are some apps, kind of third-party running apps already there. But ultimately, it feels still very much like a Samsung smartwatch based on my experience. So let's get into the running performance of the Galaxy Watch 4. Now what I will say overall is that running with this watch feels very similar to what I experienced with the Galaxy Watch 3 and the Galaxy Watch Active 2, and you could probably even go back kind of other older generations of Samsung Galaxy Watch as well. And I'm talking about the kind of accuracy kind of side of things, but also kind of the software experience that you're going to get from this watch. I'll start with GPS performance, which I guess is one of the most important things here. And a bit like the Apple Watch, when you kind of hit that start button, it's a simple countdown and it's kind of jumping straight into kind of GPS tracking. Now what I found generally is that on my runs compared to the Garmin Enduro, and the a few runs with the Chorus Vertex 2 is that the GPS on here, or the distance tracking, always seem to come up a little bit short. Not hugely, but enough to kind of slightly skew the kind of core kind of running metrics that you can expect to get from this watch. And that was on the kind of shorter runs, kind of longer marathon training runs, kind of 2-hour runs. Even on the treadmill, it came up a little bit short, on kind of 5k kind of treadmill runs as well. So generally for kind of GPS and distance tracking, it's not the most accurate that I've used. It's not the worst that I've used, but definitely it's not the most accurate that I've tested. So we look at the heart rate performance of the Galaxy Watch 4, and what I will say is that it feels very similar to what I've experienced on previous watches, and that isn't necessarily a good thing. I think generally overall, I found the heart rate sensor pretty unreliable in terms of the data it kind of delivered on runs. Now obviously I did have my own issues with the fit, and you really need to make sure you get the best kind of fit, but even when I did manage to get that, I still found that kind of maximum heart rate against a Garmin HRM Pro chest strap was generally a little bit higher. Even kind of on those steady runs, the kind of max readings seemed a little bit low. The average heart rate seemed to generally kind of match up on most runs, but there was definitely disparity on both those kind of ends of those kind of key heart rate metrics that maybe you'd be looking at. And you can kind of see in the graphs where there are differences and there are spikes and maybe drops where there shouldn't be. So for me, the heart rate performance wasn't fantastic. Obviously, you cannot pair, or currently cannot pair, an external chest strap sensor to these. So, you know, things like the Garmin Venue 2 you can. You can't with Huawei's watches. You can obviously with Apple, but obviously Apple is iOS only. This is an Android only smartwatch. So if you're looking for a watch that's going to deliver great heart rate performance, based on my experience, it's not fantastic on the Samsung Galaxy Watch 4, and you don't really have that chest strap sensor to kind of essentially bail you out either. So I think one little positive for runners on the Galaxy Watch 4 is the kind of promise of advanced running metrics without a additional sensor. So that software, or that technology, is being powered, I believe, by a company called Myotest, who I've heard about a few years ago, and they have kind of designed the technology to kind of deliver those advanced running metrics without that external sensor. So things like ground contact time, asymmetry, leg stiffness, so quite a fair amount of information there. And you can kind of review that information in real time, and essentially what it will say in real time is that these things are either good, bad, or you need to improve. What I think is really interesting is when you kind of go into the Samsung Health app and you look at your run, you kind of see that data in the app. Now I have been running with this alongside the Garmin HRM Pro, which obviously does deliver those advanced running metrics as well, and I want to kind of compare and see how that data kind of matched up. And generally, in some of the areas, things like ground contact, I found that it delivered similar looking graphs. The way they kind of calculate things is slightly different in terms of how they deliver it. Essentially on the Galaxy Watch 4, it's telling you whether it's good or bad, or whether you need to improve, and the app, and kind of on Garmin's perspective, is really kind of about laying out that information for you to interpret. And from that perspective, and I kind of compared some of the data sets between the two devices, actually a lot of things kind of told a similar story. So I think potentially that is a real kind of strength for the Galaxy Watch 4. I think I was expecting that information, a lot of information, to be pretty much kind of off, but actually a lot of the stuff that I saw from the HRM Pro advanced running metrics compared to the Samsung's ones actually kind of told a similar story. So that potentially is a really exciting feature for runners. I think for Galaxy Watch 4, I'm interested to see how maybe they evolve that feature, maybe offer more actionable kind of insights based on that information. But actually, in terms of what it delivers and what it was telling me, that information felt very similar to what I got from my Garmin chest strap as well. So that is definitely a positive from the Galaxy Watch 4, and definitely one of the features I'm looking forward to see how they improve that going forward with updates, and also maybe on their next watch. Now, in terms of battery performance on the Samsung Galaxy Watch 4, now Samsung doesn't specify what you should get from this watch. What it does, it gives you the capacity of the watches, but doesn't really attach a number in terms of what this watch can deliver. Now, based on my real world testing, just using it as a smartwatch and kind of doing a little bit of tracking, it kind of maxes out at 2 days. Now you do have a power saving mode, but actually it's not very restrictive. It does still give you access to a lot of things, but turns off things like Wi-Fi and the always on display. You can kind of get a little bit extra, but it's essentially 2 days, and with the always on display, it's about a day. Now, if you factor in running and the kind of GPS battery life performance, I found that with kind of an hour worth of running with the screen not set to always on, I found it dropped by about 20% in my time with it. Now, when I moved to using it with the always on display, it was kind of, I got similar performance in terms of not having that screen on, but also I got times where actually there was a really small amount of battery drop off. So I did one run and there was only 3% drop off from an hour's worth of running. So it's a very inconsistent battery performance, I found, or GPS battery performance. If you compare it to what things like the Huawei Watch GT2e or GT2, things like the Garmin Venue, other kind of Android options, I think that the battery performance on those watches are a little bit more consistent, particularly kind of day to day, and also when you're using GPS. So in terms of battery performance, it's very similar to what I found on the previous Samsung Galaxy Watches, so the Galaxy Watch 3 and the Galaxy Watch Active 2. Essentially, you're maxing out on 2 days, just generally, and a little bit of tracking. GPS battery life, the drop-off is pretty significant, at least based on my experience, but also there's been times when actually the battery has been minor in terms of drop-off, so definitely inconsistent and maybe not the most reliable. In terms of charging, it's going to take a couple of hours to get from 0 to 100%. You've got a similar kind of cradle charger that Samsung has used on its watches before, which kind of doesn't securely kind of fasten to the back of the watch, but if you've got it away from everything else that you have on your bedside table, then essentially it will charge fine. But ultimately, yeah, battery life performance for me on the Galaxy Watch 4, not a huge upgrade on the previous Samsung watches, and not a massive improvement in terms of what other watches are out there for Android, and are kind of good for running. So my verdict on the Samsung Galaxy Watch 4 as a strong smartwatch for runners. And just as a reminder, this only works with Android, so it doesn't work with iOS. So as an option for Android phone owners, I would say that it is a good option, but it is probably not the best option. Design-wise, no major issues from my perspective, but in terms of performance, it's not quite there. It's very similar to what I've experienced on previous Samsung smartwatches. It doesn't feel like it's massively developed from that. I think one highlight and one thing to kind of praise it for, that advanced running metrics, where I think is really interesting, and I think potentially can really grow to be a really strong feature for the Galaxy Watch 4. Ultimately, everything else, those core kind of performance and the things you expect it to kind of really nail, I still think it's very similar to what I've experienced before. Now, if I compare it to what else is out there for kind of Android users, we've highlighted it in our best running watch video. I would say the best option for me, based on my experience and based on our testing, would be the Garmin Venue 2. I think you're getting a better kind of run tracking experience. You're getting better in terms of the accuracy, better in terms of those kind of features that you might want as a runner in terms of creating kind of training sessions, kind of interval sessions, things that you won't really get here on the Galaxy Watch 4. You can pair it to a chest strap sensor to get more accurate heart rate. GPS kind of performance is generally better. You're still getting a lot of the smartwatch features on the Venue 2 as well. You're probably getting a richer one on the Samsung, but ultimately I think you're getting a better balance of kind of running watch and kind of smartwatch experience on the Garmin Venue 2. And I also think looking at things like the Huawei Watch GT2e, I think it offers a little bit more in terms of kind of battery life. I think some really kind of nice running features on there as well. I think generally kind of tracking performance was a little bit better. Again, you can't pair it with a higher heart rate monitor. The heart rate monitor accuracy on the Huawei is not fantastic either, based on our testing. So there are other options. If you are looking for the best kind of smartwatch kind of for running, if you own an Android phone, I think still the Garmin Venue 2 is probably your best option. You could probably save yourself a bit of money and go for a Huawei Watch GT2 or GT2e. You might lose some of those kind of richer smartwatch features, but essentially you're getting a better running performance, and you kind of, where you're making compromises, you're getting better in terms of kind of run tracking. So For me, the Galaxy Watch 4, not a breakthrough kind of device for kind of runners. Some interesting features there, but ultimately it feels very similar to what we got on previous Samsung watches. What I will be interested to see is how the wear OS influence kind of evolves over time. Whether there'll be more coming over Fitbit, which we've not praised Fitbit massively in terms of what they offer for runners, but actually bringing in what Samsung, Google and Fitbit can offer in terms of runners might be a really kind of compelling prospect. Hopefully the battery life can get better, because that's not really proved on that front, and just making it play with a lot more different apps, which maybe can make this a better watch outside of what the kind of Google, Samsung and kind of Fitbit influence can bring to this watch. So for me, as a smartwatch for running and an option for Android, I think there are better options out there. It's good, it's just not the best out there. So there you have it. That is our take on the Samsung Galaxy Watch 4. Now, if you've got any questions about our testing, let us know in the comments below. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about latest videos, and yeah, we'll see you for the next Run Testers video.